Hey, what up, guys?
Hey,
Levi Moroshan here, and then Johnny's on the line with me.
how you guys doing? We're going to talk about a couple of topics today regarding the state of where we're at in terms of photography. I think this is a hot topic regardless. Levi and I both talked about it on the phone, and we thought, we could kind of expand on some of our thoughts, some of the issues we're having at this particular moment in time. And I'm going to let Levi start. So, all you.
So, and one of the things that I think is uh, kind of a good thing to just kind of mention is, so I'm in Portland, Oregon, where the market's a little bit different than where Johnny is in Boise, Idaho. And so a lot of what, opinions that I might have or Johnny might have are kind of because of where we're at. And I know that no matter where everybody is, it's going to be different, and it's going to be different circumstances, different situation, different markets. But I think that a few of the things I wanted to touch on are relevant to no matter where you're at. The most important, especially with everything going on right now, is having multiple avenues in your business. So I know there's a lot, like for instance, wedding photographers. They're like, that's done. They're not working really anything at this point. Um, so even for me, I do, portraits, I do advertising, I do headshots and behind the scenes photography. So with the network TVs and a lot of the movie stuff, that has pretty much stopped as well. We're not really shooting anything, and even when we are, it's only like critical people that are on set. And a lot of times, the BTS photographer doesn't always fall in that category. Um, the headshots, of course, have pretty much dried up. The only kind of portraits or headshot work that I'm still doing is, oddly enough, for politicians, because there's rules with how old your headshot could be in the voters pamphlet, and this being an election year, it makes it necessary that a lot of them update their photos, or they can't have their photo in the vote, in the voters pamphlet.
Interesting.
So
I did not know that.
yeah, so
Interesting.
yeah, so I get a few of those, and the main thing though that is one of those things where it's pivoting your business, I guess, is at this point I've picked up more product photography clients, and even just random clients right now that businesses are popping up with PPE, with masks and gowns and face shields and gloves. So all of that needs to be photographed. And so a company reached out to me and started sending me all that type of product to start photographing for their website. So even in this downtime, sure, I'm not doing as much, in one direction, but then you pivot and position yourself in another direction where you still have income coming in, but you're adapting to what's going on in the market. And so people can send me product, I shoot it, send them the photos, they pay me online, I give them the uploads online. They don't ask for the product back, so I just keep whatever they send me, which
Do
is
they?
in a way
Is it,
good for me because I get extra
do they?
math.
Do they? Most of the time, they do because they don't
Yeah.
want to. They don't want to absorb the cost shipping it back to the.
No, that's one thing. They don't want to absorb the cost. And with the virus stuff going on, they
They don't
don't
want.
want just, they're not going to be able to reuse the product.
Right.
So it's just, it doesn't matter. It's, what they pay for it, I'm sure, is way less than what they're charging.
So
So,
let's talk about that for a second because that's kind of a niche market. I mean, so if you're going from headshots to product photography, ideally right now it's a great time to be doing product photography because you can be in your own studio. Like you said, you can have the customer ship it to you. It's completely hands off. Everybody's got their 6 feet of separation in terms of, being healthy in a safe environment. So that's a great option. And there's another one that you wanted to talk about as well.
yeah, the other, so that's one of the ways is just adapting to kind of what's going on in this, your town, your world, whatever it is. The other thing is, because just like we're doing this over Zoom. And I don't know how many businesses have switched to online telecommuting, working from home. So at this point, it's more critical than before even to have a solid profile picture. And again, that's where headshot photography, portrait photography is going to come into play, because you can do that, like even when I do portraits now, like we don't have a makeup artist, we don't have a stylist, so that way nobody gets close to the person.
Right.
But when we are, photographing the person, you can keep your distance, you can do your thing. And I mean, things are going to loosen up. So it's not like it's going to be this restrictive for, the next 10 years. But at this point, it's harder, but it'll get easier to do that. But then I think more businesses now that are doing telecommuting and seeing that, hey, this might be a way for us to be able to do this, save some money, let some of our employees work from home. But then, when you go, the first impression you get of a business now is what you see online, is their headshots and their about page. And so the more solid and cohesive that is, and everybody looks the same and has got the same thing, that's going to make you look more professional.
Well, and I had a client call me here in Boise. We talked about it. He called, he's an international traveler, and he said, right from his mouth was that he does a lot of these Zoom calls, and he wanted his profile picture when he started. And I don't use Zoom a lot. I mean, this is probably my third time I've ever used it.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that that was the priorities, that he wanted his Zoom picture to look professional,
Mm-hmm.
And match his genre of profession, so that he looked sharp. And I think, one of the things you and I talked about is you've got now 30 million people.
Mm-hmm.
There are 30 million people in the country, and now 30 million of them are unemployed. So when you start looking at like Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm a big LinkedIn guy. I mean, so there's a lot of people that don't have a very put together LinkedIn profile. I mean, like their photo is just kind of like, they're at the beach, they got their shirt off. I don't think that's going to fly. I think because it's going to get more competitive for people looking for work.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you're going to have to sharpen up your image. And I don't think the old way of, looking like you're the beach bum, throwing up a peace sign is going to cut it. And, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, especially even now, I'm seeing more and more when I get an email from a business, they have their contact information attached to the bottom, plus a photo, plus some kind of a headshot. And one, that puts kind of a face with the communication you're doing. But the more professional, it might seem like a little thing, but I think that if somebody's looking through resumes and somebody has a solid professional shot, it might just be a subconscious thing, but it might just lean that person to that direction.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You're totally true. And I use your headshot that you did a few years back, which I probably need to update. But like I use that in my resume if I have, I'm in between for some work. Because obviously the photography on my end in Boise, that's a whole nother story, is a little slow in my world, because it's people here are just not as, they're not, coming from Portland after living there with you for, not you in particular, but like living in Portland for 38 years, people there have a different view of what their professional portfolio looks like, their headshots. And here it's not, people here are very, loose cut, and that's fine. But they don't put as much emphasis into their headshot as they do in Portland. So then they're just two different spaces, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I think you're right. Having that picture in your resume, and whether it's even just an online profile, I think is highly important, because we do look at people, and I use your picture that I've been using for years as part of a resume. If I have to send it out, I put it up in the left corner, and I think it looks great.
Yeah, and then kind of related to that topic, the other thing too is I think we're getting more and more to the point where it's more of a you want your portrait, headshot, whatever you want to call it, to have a genuine look of you. So when somebody looks at that, maybe they get a little glimpse of your personality, of how you are, your attitude maybe. And I think that it's getting to the point where it's less about the gear and more about the product, more about the person, more about just the photographer's interaction with the person. And I think that's where, no matter, like, when 35 millimeter came around, people were complaining because it's taking work away from professional photographers that shot only medium format at the time, because now everybody can shoot 35 millimeter.
Right.
Well, when digital came around, same exact argument. Where, but you adapt, and it hasn't affected my business, with people flooding in and coming in with, now every camera is going to take a good photo. That's not the point. The point is
within the last 10, 15 years, I mean, you could use an EOS 5D and
sure.
you're still going to get a fantastic photo. I mean,
sure.
You are.
So I think most of the time now, especially in headshot and portrait work, it's how you can pull expressions and real, genuine looks from your clients. And I think that in itself is a skill that takes time to learn. And then once you have it, you can do that with any camera. Yep. It's just getting to that point where if like you can take an iPhone photo, and if you are able to manipulate the light, your client, whatever it is, to get that genuine expression, it's still going to be a better photo than one that you're going to take, with the phase medium format camera. If you just tell, your client just sits there and just gives you a cheesy smile, it's not going to do nothing. So I think that kind of ties in to not only having a professional profile pic, but a genuine, pleasant kind of look, confident, is a good word.
Well, and sometimes when you look at headshots, and there are times when I'll look at headshots and there's just no expression, and I think to myself, you can tell who's behind the camera because and that's not always the case, but when I look at somebody's photo, like I just shot Tammy, the mayor of Meridian, and the guy that I shot it for said, "John, you nailed her personality. You pulled that out of her," and that's the whole point. It's not so much that it has to be that perfect, drop down, and then you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
It can just be a natural. I mean, it still has to have good composition, but at the same time, I feel like when you have and I'm like a bad example because my profile pic that I have that you shot of me is the one that I use where I'm kind of stoic, but I always am more attracted to somebody. I'm attracted to somebody who's got a smile, and I think it's really important, especially now, to have a headshot that is evoking a little bit of happiness in a space where I think we feel a little bit of darkness. Does that make sense?
Sure. I totally agree. So those are kind of just a few quick takes on kind of what's going on. And I think, how as photographers, just like in any business, you adapt. Just like I have a buddy in Chicago who they have a coffee business that was like a storefront, and they don't have a drive-through or anything, and they had to close down. But then what they did is they actually replaced their front entry door to their coffee shop with one of those half doors and a window as it was a drive-through. So people just pull up to the curb, get out, order their coffee, get their coffee. And so that's just another business that is adapting to the current situation and what's going on. And I think as photographers, we do the exact same thing. And that's where it's like I'm saying, I can't stress enough how having multiple different things that you can do. Like, I'm not saying be the jack of all trades where you're shooting, weddings, maternity, baby pictures, whatever it is. I'm just saying have a couple things that you can fall back on or you can do to just, help offset whatever's happening in another part of your market.
Right. In other words, if you have a focus like yours is typically headshots,
sure.
you also do a lot of product photography. But if your focus is a business and your main, revenue generator is headshots, you're going to have to look outside the box. Sure. There's so many photographers. We watched F-stoppers talk about this. I've watched every YouTube channel going on about, there's going to be this saturation of people. And we kind of talked about this at the beginning, which I'll tip into. I don't want to get too crazy into it like we just touched on, which is, the pricing of things. Where do you balance things out? And that's always the main question is, do I lower my prices? I mean, this is always like how do I bid on it?
Mhm.
Everybody wants to know this question.
Yeah.
What do I do to keep my self-respect, but also I still need money coming in the door? So what do I do without, completely hoeing the market out, so to speak, and dragging other photographers down? Because I think you kind of want to have a barometer of, a professional fee that doesn't start, ruining the market elsewhere. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there comes a point where you just have to be confident in what you're charging.
Right.
And sure, you might lose some clientele. When I had raised my prices at one point, I lost clientele. But having demonstrating to the client that they're not just paying like just they're paying for a photographer, but
Right.
they're paying for a certain amount of service, a certain amount of quality, a certain amount of above and beyond what the next person's going to do. And I think that's where you deliver a little bit more every time than what the customer is expecting. And I think that's where you start to be able to charge certain prices, and then it just becomes word of mouth. Like even right now, yeah, you're right. I do product photography and I do headshots. I mainly focus on headshots. I do that all the time, but then I get product photography clients because either people ask or they're referrals from other product photography clients. Well, so in this situation though, I'm not doing any headshots, so I'm pushing the product photography side a little more. And so that's reaching out to people and just randomly, different people that I've worked with before, just messaging them and being like, hey, this might be a good time to think about, updating some product stuff or doing this and that, not in like a sales guy kind of way, but just in a, hey, this might be a good time since everybody's got downtime. This might be a good time to do that.
And and here's the thing: everybody's going to be on the sales move, and like you're either going to have to push your photography and be a little bit salesy. I don't think you need to like get crazy with it and call people out of the blue and get weird and spam them.
Oh, sure.
But I think with where we're at and where the market is sitting, and we don't know which direction it's going to fly, I think you need to be a little bit more aggressive than non-aggressive when it comes to making sure that you're not sinking, right? I mean, you got to look at businesses because they're still going to need. I mean, not everybody's going to need a photographer at this particular moment in life. They're going to prioritize what it is they need for their marketing,
Sure.
And you have to look at those businesses that you think are going to be viable, like you just talked about the PPE wear. That right now, that's. I mean, you can go watch some girl making a mask on YouTube, and she has 29 million views in less than 5 days. So we know what people are focused on, and that's clearly an avenue. So what other avenues do you think people could focus on? If you're a wedding photographer, and you and I mean, we've done some wedding stuff together, and I'm not a wedding photographer, but what's your opinion? I mean, what would you do if like your primary source of income had been weddings, and we've now slowed down? What would you do?
That'd be a tough one. That'd be a tough one because you're not, I think is one of those things where you'd have to start focusing on later down the road, like next year's bookings.
Right.
If I was in that kind of a situation, I would fine tune my website. I would fine tune my marketing materials. I would focus on what I can focus on and start reaching out to people in that way, even if it's one of those things where you're just, having to offer some kind of a discount for like early bookings to get some money coming in. You could also, one of the things is, oh no, I just got a thing. It says like,
Oh, we've just been upgraded, everybody.
no, we just had like a time limit message come on the screen.
We did, but we just got upgraded. So hey, yay for us. Anyway, so keep going. So discounting.
So I think that's where discounting could come into play a little bit. I think maybe even, there's companies out there like even Squarespace and stuff where you're able to promote prints. So even maybe weddings you've done, just kind of if there's new products available, to send those out to clients. I mean, to send like an email showing, hey, these new clients, and then like a lot of the newer stuff, they actually incorporate the photos, the actual photos you took,
Yeah.
onto the product so they can see what it looks like. So I think things like that is pretty much all you can do in this point. And again, it's always city specific, state specific. You could do a social distancing type of photo shoot where
you could,
you meet up in a park,
yeah,
and the couple can just, they're together, do whatever, and then you're there to photograph and document it. So,
and I just saw one by the Boise River yesterday as I was coming across, right as you come into
yeah.
Eagle, and there was a couple by the Hilton Garden Inn or whatever the heck it is, and kind of tucked within the bushes. And I looked at my wife and I'm like, oh my gosh, so I mean, people are still going to get married. They have dates.
Sure.
A lot of people here in Idaho do it in their backyard, so
Sure.
you can still have social distancing from a step away. There was one other topic that I wanted to touch base with you on, which was we were talking about the weddings. Dan, you know who Dan Milner is?
Yeah.
Have you run into Dan Milner yet?
No.
He's a fascinating guy. He's on YouTube somewhere, but he's actually a photojournalist.
Mm-hmm.
But he does like coffee table books, and you and I talked about this, which
Sure.
I think is going to become popular. I think it's something that you could add into your marketing. Like if you're doing wedding, I know a lot of people already do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I may be speaking completely out of left field, but even like just like family books, like there's a huge Mormon community here. People do a lot of family photos here. You could incorporate, instead of just doing like a family shot, you could add in as an upsell, that coffee table book that is going to, stay around for years. I still have books that I've had since I was in my 20s. So, food for thought. What else? Updating your website, maybe polishing up your prices a little bit.
But I think, it's looking to the future and just planning for that is in those kind of situations. If you're, different, and that's why each market is different. And that's why even each niche or genre of photography is different. Like if you're, a maternity photographer, people are still having babies. And so I'm sure there's, again, it's about getting creative, which is what we would do best, and figure out ways to adapt to what it is that's going on. And that's, at the end of the day, that's really all you can do.
And I think one of the takeaways that I'll kind of start wrapping up on is, with all of this time that we've had, all sitting in our homes, I think our priorities have changed a lot.
Sure.
A friend of mine the other day said, he's like, John, he says, think of life as a river, and when you dam it up, what happens? It starts making arterials, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts like the water finds a different path, and sooner or later it like changes its behavior. And I think a lot of us have changed our behavior within the last 60 days, to say the least. So I think the importance of like sitting at home with your family has become, I mean, we're focusing, I think we've seen more focus on what's really important to people.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the gear, it's not that, and it's not important. Capturing a moment is going to be way more important. And I think the priority of, people just living and capturing those moments is going to be what people are going to be more focused on, as opposed to, do you have an $8,000 DSLR with I mean, nobody's going to care about that. Just take the picture.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, food for thought.
Cool. No, I get it. It's definitely going to be different as we move forward. So.
Yeah. Any thoughts you want to leave off on that you've?
No, just I would tell everybody, just focus, shoot more, and don't get caught up on the gear that you're using. It's
true. And one of the things that I think is important, even, and this is kind of a little bit left, but is you and I do street photography. I mean, it's my favorite medium is street photography. Both of us, I think it is for me. I don't know about you.
Sure. Yeah, no, I love it.
but I think to get out and do that kind of just to like throw that into your arsenal, I think is great to have because
Sure.
it puts you in an environment where you're a little bit uncomfortable with people you don't know, but it enhances when you get into a studio. I think it enhances how you interact with the client in the studio. Does that make any
Yeah.
sense? I
No,
don't.
it does. It does.
Yeah.
You're right. So
So, well, Levi, thank you.
cool, man. Johnny, good to chat with you for a bit.
Yeah, that was good.
So yeah. All right,
Uh,
man.
so we'll. I think we'll see how these go. But if you have any questions, you can leave them down. We're both going to have a spot on each one of our channels.
Mhm.
If you have any questions between either one of us, feel free to ask. Subscribe to Levi. He's got great tutorials on all sorts of how to do headshots. His lighting stuff is fantastic. So go check out, subscribe to his channel. And, if you guys have any questions and you want to see another one of these videos, let us know. I mean, both Levi and I love talking about this stuff. So,
Yeah, and even if you've got other topics, that you want to kind of discuss,
yeah.
Because I know that each of us have a different take. Like you, Johnny, have a different take on certain things than I might. So I think being able to like spitball and hash them out with somebody else is kind of a good way to just maybe think about them in a different way that you or I might have not thought about.
Oh, totally. And what's fun about you and I is that we can be controversial. We can also be objective. And I think we look at, there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions about what's going on with photography right now. There's
Sure.
just so many different variables. You've got, phones like iPhones that have come in, the iPhone 11. I mean, you've got all this great new fancy technology, but at the end of the day, it all still boils down to photography and the art of
Sure.
photography.
Sure.
And I think we're both utterly passionate about it. I mean, I know I am. I didn't even like photography. I hated photography class, and here I am. It's one of. I mean, so I probably spend more time just watching photo, videos online. But if you have any questions, let us know. We'll be happy to answer them. Levi.
Yeah, no, it's great, and thanks for anybody who tuned in.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on even what we were talking about. If you have a different take than we do,
and we'll talk about off camera here about like setting up a date that we can
sure.
do about this, so that we can do one of these a week, or and kind of answer some of the questions that
Sure.
come about. Marketing photography is kind of a weird deal for a lot of people. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out how to imagine themselves and how they can, keep the monetary income coming in this
Yeah.
kind of weird environment. So, all right, well, guys, Levi.
Cool, man. Johnny, see you next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, later.